Chris
Right,
McDonald.
so you guys are
Not here,
good to go
but we
whenever
have,
you guys want.
yeah. So the application review committee meeting has no formal application, but I've asked Steve Kleppen, Director of Planning and Zoning, to discuss the East Norwalk TOD, the Transit-Oriented District Development Plan. And so I guess without further ado, Steve, would you like to unmute your mic? And okay.
Can you guys hear me or no?
Yes, Steve, you're okay. You're fine.
Okay. All right, good. All right, can you see my screen before I get started?
Yes.
Yes.
You're all good? Okay. All right, well, thanks for giving me a few minutes, your time tonight. The presentation's only about 20 minutes, so it's not going to weigh you down too much with time commitment. Let me switch over to slideshow and then I'll get going. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background, the city, we submitted a grant application probably at least 2 years ago now to this state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management for a grant to look at the East Norwalk train station area to try to look at what future development should look like. We were awarded the grant and chose a consultant, which is the Harriman Group. They're out of Boston. They've done work in the city in the past, and they have a couple sub-consultants that work on the project. So we work with them to get a scope of work. There's an oversight committee that's been looking at this project since its beginning. It's been at least 18 months from start to finish, a little longer than I would have liked, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast sometimes. So we're at the stage now where there's a draft plan that's been circulated to the committee members. They've made comments. They are now, the consultant's working on edits, so I'm hoping that the draft plan itself is out for public comment in about 2 weeks. And then we're going to try to schedule a public presentation to show everybody that's interested what the plan's about and get feedback. And then the Planning Commission will start the formal process of amending the Plan of Conservation and Development. And that part itself will probably be pretty small, where it might just be a sentence or two in the plan to kind of indicate that this plan itself is the guide document for East Norwalk, but that does require the full amendment process to the POCD. So we'll be sending out referrals again to Harbor Management as well as the Common Council, similar to what we did last year with the POCD. This slide right here, which I'm going to be referring to, it shows up in most of the slides itself, is kind of the top 10 takeaways, even though I think there's only 9 on the screen, the top 9 thematic things that come out of the plan itself. And I'll go through each one and give a little background on what they represent. The first one is labeled number 1. It's probably the most significant and most impactful recommendation that comes out of the plan. The area with the orange hatch with the yellow outline, that's basically East Avenue from 95 to the north. 95 is a double red line you can see at the top of the picture. And that goes down to about Gregory Boulevard and Cemetery Street down there. Those parcels, for the most part, probably 90% of those parcels are zoned what the city calls neighborhood business. We're proposing to rezone them to a new zone, which will be a village district. And the significance of the village district is it gives the city design control over what the sites look like and what the buildings look like at the end of the day. And in order for somebody to take advantage of the additional height and density that's proposed as part of the village district, they have to give back to the city a list of amenities, and there's a formula that goes along with that, and I'll go through that in a little bit later. But there's things like outdoor seating areas, outdoor plazas, public art, and maybe will be a little more impactful for the work that you guys do, would be like improved drainage features, looking at green development, low impact development standards, trying to lessen the impervious surface and get more on-site retention of water. Also on this slide, and they're not in numerical order based on, you know, when I orientated it's different, but just how I broke down the slide so you could see things on there. The area number 6, in there, it's illustrated by that blue line there. Those properties are currently zoned Industrial 1. The Industrial 1 zone properties in this area kind of run east to west parallel with the rail tracks, and they kind of go down to where the WPCA is and the Dpw Garage is, and then all the way up to the east towards where Dooney and Burke is, just to orientate you a little bit on that. One recommendation we have for that is to allow some residential above the ground floor or multi-ground floor commercial uses, and the idea behind that is it's a pretty modest density, but it's a way that these property owners can monetize their properties, get a little more value out of their properties, but they have to maintain the ground floor commercial uses. We found doing our research and outreach as part of the plan that there are a lot of small manufacturer and warehouse type uses in that I-1 corridor, and we want to definitely not lose any of those and try to get some ways to enhance that. So we think this is one way we can help those property owners. There is, in the last note on this area is there's a couple parcels that are residentially zoned that we're also recommending for inclusion in the new village district, and those are labeled number 7, which is kind of in the bottom right-hand corner of that slide. The next area, there's 3, this is a little more to the west of the study area. What's not shown on this, and I probably should have put this on in hindsight, is the study area we started looking at. It's a half-mile radius from the train station, so that's a pretty big area. That goes basically from kind of Liberty Square all the way up past Dooney and Burke, up north of 95, and then down towards like 2nd Street, 1st Street area, down in the Cove Ave section of East Norwalk. But area number 2, I just give you a little highlight. That's an area where we targeted for as a preservation area because it kind of provides de facto affordable housing. We want to not see that developed in a way where we lose that de facto affordable housing. We're not proposing any increase to the number of dwelling units somebody can put there, or they can't make them any bigger. We're just trying to come up with some preservation tools for that area. The area number 3 is the Dpw Garage. One of the recommendations that the consultant came up with as part of this is that the city should consider relocating the Dpw Garage, not the WPCA plant, but the Dpw Garage. Where that would get relocated to, we didn't contemplate that, but we said maybe the city should think about that and then repurpose that site for other uses, whether it's active commercial, water-dependent use, whether it's green space. We didn't come up with any recommendations on what it should be, understanding that that would have to go through a very formalized city process where we look at that area much more closely, but we want that, you know, maybe in the long run, having the Dpw Garage isn't the best use of land right next to the Norwalk River. And there are several areas you can see on the map that are labeled number 5. Those areas are currently zoned commercial, and we're recommending those get rezoned to residential. A lot of them have residential uses on them now, and they're kind of outlier properties, and what we're saying is we think that the commercial use should be concentrated along the East Avenue corridor and pull those outlier commercial areas in and return them to residential, which would be more in keeping with what's in the surrounding area.
What zone would they be, Steve? C, D, B?
Most of them are C. I
Okay.
think probably 90%
Two-family?
of them are C.
2 family.
Yeah, the 1 or 2. A little more closer to what, you know, some of the areas that you guys get involved with. Area number 4, the circle's a little wider than it should be, but that's the Liberty Square area. What the study is recommending is not really any change there. That's an area identified as like an area to be preserved that, you know, it's kind of got a unique character to it. So we'd like to see it maintained and enhanced. So we're, at some point in time, we'll come up with design standards for that not proposing any additional residential density or any additional height or any changes to the bulk and mass of what you can do there, but just as a way, we hope that that can be preserved in the long run.
Steve, is there
Another
such a,
recommendation.
is
Oh, I'm
there
sorry,
such
go
a,
ahead.
is there such a way, because that's where the area was behind Liberty Square, where the state condemned it and took over the land, where Penna was and all of that. And we've always been led to believe, in theory, that we were gonna wind up with, the city had the first right of refusal to purchase that property, and then it would go for water use. But if the city doesn't, then it's gonna go to the highest bidder. And should there not be some kind of restrictions within the TOD to what actually could go there, or a list of things that should go there that would be water dependent?
Or
Yeah,
John, the other-
I agree. I agree with what your recommendations, and I think that's what would be consistent with what we're saying. Now, the city, I think, does have, I believe the city has the right of first refusal with that, but that's something that I think gets followed up with as part of the walk bridge program. But I agree with what you're saying. That would be consistent with what we recommend.
Steve, could I ask, John, can I make a comment or ask a question?
Absolutely.
On the Liberty Square area, the waterfront property there, which was the former boatyard and marina, which has been eliminated, Steve, because of the bridge project. But the understanding has always been that when that property is redeveloped, it will need to be redeveloped with a water-dependent use that's more than just public access. So there has to be some sort of a marina facility, boatyard facility, something with direct access to the water, in addition to any sort of public access walkway. Can the TOD plan also call for that? You know what I mean? The water-dependent use is gone, and nothing's going to be there for a number of years. And when it's finally redeveloped, our policy in the plan is it has to be redeveloped with more than just public access. Can the TOD plan add something to that effect too?
Yeah, I'll double check the actual text within the draft to see if it says that. I remember we had that in there. I'll make sure it is. Yeah, I have no issue with that.
And I think what Deep said is in the permit that they issue to DOT, or not in the permit. Yes, the permit will require that when DOT transfers that property to whomever they transfer it to, there would have to be some sort of restriction that, or some sort of condition to the effect of what I just said. Has to be more than just public walkway for redevelopment.
Okay. No, I have no.
This is Chris McDonald. Can we go as far as to make it a marine commercial zoning? Or does nothing we do have as much teeth as Deep, or does Deep have no teeth? That's I know Deep, I know Deep requires, but if there's any, force to that, DOT can dispose of the land as they see fit. Deep certainly wants it to be water dependent use and is encouraging it, but they don't have any mechanism to require it, is my understanding.
They would require it by putting something in the deed for the property when it's transferred, or Deep requiring DOT to put something in the deed in order to get the permit for the bridge. That's my understanding.
Yeah, like I said, I'll double check to make sure the language is in there, but yeah, I have no, that makes sense to me. Would be consistent with what we've done elsewhere, so that's fine.
Right. And that's only for the parcel west of Goldstein, not the parcels east of Goldstein, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
The area labeled number 8 on there is, to me, I think would be one of the kind of exciting things that comes out of the plan is that what the plan contemplates is an active promenade from, basically running along Vets Park, trying to connect South Norwalk to East Norwalk. And there's a couple pictures on the kind of the right there that show some ideas and things we could do. It could be areas for recreation. It could be areas for, public assembly of some kind, whether it's for little activities or whatever, expanded areas for seating, biking, walking, other things like that. So it's just an area to congregate, and it could serve as a real connector between the East Norwalk and South Norwalk and be a draw for the entire city. And then there's a couple other areas, as I indicated on the last slide, labeled number 5, that are also proposed for rezoning to residential from the existing commercial.
What about number 9, Steve, on east side of the East Norwalk area?
That's
Basin.
that should be right up there right now. So similar to what we talked about with Liberty Square, the Cove area and around First Ave, that to me, that's one of my favorite parts of the city. And I think it's got a really unique character. So one of the things the plan recommends, similar to Liberty Square, is setting up a separate village district there. And it's only meant as a preservation tool, not as a tool to gain anything additional. So they wouldn't be allowed additional height or building mats or anything like that, just a way that the unique character of that area is preserved. So that's something that we can do in-house after the plan's adopted, because the heavy lift is really the village district that runs along East Avenue. Again, here's just a couple outline areas proposed to get included as residential from commercial. Just some highlights of, again, getting back specifically to the proposed village district. It requires that the ground floor, as shown in the areas on the map, have kind of an active ground floor use. It doesn't have to be retail, it can be anything commercial where we're trying to get people in and out of the street. And this keeping in mind, we're hopeful we're back past the point where we're all kind of socially isolated. And so the current zoning allows 2.5 stories. We're proposing to allow an additional story and additional density. But in order to get the additional density and additional height, they have to give the city back some things that we identified through discussions among the committee members, as well as through public outreach and some of our public meetings we had. And those can include things like how they develop the site in terms of lid, also looking at enhanced, as I mentioned before, enhanced seating areas, outdoor plazas, seated areas kind of showed in some of these diagrams here, where they can also serve as public art, green infrastructure, shaded seated areas, public Wi-Fi, and I mentioned public art. A couple other, and I think there's a couple more pictures a little further below, but it's kind of trying to change the narrative of what the area looks and feels like, because to me, while Liberty Square and Cove Avenue have some really unique characters and they're really nice places where you want to go, the East Avenue stretch from 95 and even south of the train station is anything but pedestrian friendly and anything but a place where anybody wants to congregate or walk. So we're hoping to change the way that functions. I touched on this below.
Might be next door. On our meeting.
I touched on this a little earlier. This was another provision put in for
Harbor
the
management, you never
Industrial
know
1
with
zone
people.
to enhance the
Yeah.
allow the property owners to enhance and monetize their properties. And here's the kind of just to give an example of what could be. It's important to note, and this came out a lot during the public process, was that the plan's not recommending that the city look at taking anybody's property. Any business or use that's there now is allowed to stay. We're not proposing to take anything away from anybody. But if in the future, should these properties get redeveloped, we want to have a say in how that happens. So this is that kind of odd intersection of Winfield, East Ave, Gregory, and Rogers Square. Right now, the buildings and uses that are there are not the highest and best use of property. So this is kind of what the vision could be in the future. So the consultant team looked at a couple different scenarios on how it could be redeveloped with some changes to the zoning, going from 2.5 stories to 3.5 stories by looking at the amenities that would be required in order to do that, such as putting the parking to the rear of the building, having wider seating areas out front, And they did some formulas and tried to test fit it to see what would actually happen. And they ran two scenarios. This is a little different than this other scenario where there's a little bit larger building on the north versus the other scenario. And this is kind of what it could look like versus what it looks like today, where it's an area where there could be a large outdoor seating area, maybe there's a restaurant. The parking is all to the rear. It's a much more attractive design than what's currently there, and the regulations are allow for that to happen. There's also several pedestrian amenities and pedestrian enhancements that we're looking at in terms of bump outs, trying to make the sidewalk safer, adding mid-block crosswalks to get people from point A to point B without taking their lives into their hand, because East Avenue is not a fun place to try to cross at any juncture.
I mean, you're going to run into a lot of issues with character of neighborhood. That's right by the cemetery. You've got the old Roger Ludlow School behind those buildings there.
Yeah, so that leads right into what the next part of the presentation is. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, so since it's a village district, the city has the ability to apply and adopt design guidelines for that. So the one thing we heard pretty loud and clear throughout the process was this, the East Norwalk area has kind of got a maritime feel to it. So we looked at other areas that had that kind of maritime feel, and the committee with the consultant team came up with a lot of different design elements that people liked. There were several references to areas in Greenwich that had a feel that they would like to see. Bottom right pictures from Newburyport, Massachusetts. We also looked at Rockport, Massachusetts, and here's some just different themes that we came up with, as well as some items that were taken out of Westport. And we didn't just look at the building architecture, we also looked at the streetscape, bike racks, the landscaping that will go in to make sure it's compatible and suitable for a maritime environment. We looked at the type of lighting that will go in, the building facades, the type of street furniture, how the sidewalks would work, etc. So it's kind of a detailed look at it. And the idea being that if a developer comes in, he knows, if I design to these standards, the likelihood of me getting an approval is much more increased versus, if we had kind of vague guidelines with, a little bit of non-concrete standards. This gives them okay, this is what the city's looking for. I have certainty when I go into my design as well as my pricing for it, so I know what I'm getting before I get into it. And I think that's it. Happy to take any other questions you have.
Could I try to share a photo on my screen, Brian? Would that work if I?
Yeah, Steve will have to stop sharing and then you can.
All right.
Okay, all done.
Now, if I can share my screen. Well, maybe I can't do this. I thought I had, well, let's see. No, I guess that's not going to work. I had some photos. I'll try to do that. Ask my questions without the photos, Steve. John, can I ask a few questions, or do you want to go first? Or?
I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead. Yes, Jeff. Did you try the bottom of your screen?
Yeah, I did. I had some of the aerial photos. I don't know what I.
Yeah, but if you push, see is there a little green button in the bottom of your screen?
Yeah. No, I'm there. If it doesn't work, it's what it. I don't know what happened to the ones I had at the bottom of my.
Which were the ones that any ones you sent to me?
Now let's see if I can just do one. Wait a minute.
I have.
If I can't.
What do you want? The Liberty Square section?
No, just give me a second. Give me a second, John. If it doesn't work. I put that on my screen. Can you see that, or?
No.
No.
All right. All right, forget that. I didn't work. Well, let's see if I can do it this way.
There it is, Jeff.
There you go.
All right, there. Can you see that?
Yes.
So Steve, did you ever figure out where most of the drainage goes from the TOD district? Does it end up going into the mill pond, or does it go out into the river in another area?
I don't know. I'd have to check with DPW on that. I mean, I'd be surprised if it all went to one. That's a big area to go into one source, especially Mill Pond, I would think.
Well, that was one of our questions when the old factory store property was being developed. Where does the drainage go from this area? And I thought a good amount of it here did. But anyway, that's one thing that we might want to think about, because most of our comments, or many of our comments, would have to do with stormwater management. Also, does the state legislation authorizing the TOD district, does that allow or authorize eminent domain for? I know you said that you don't intend to take properties, but does the legislation authorize you to do it, or for the state to do it near a train station? Or was that removed from the legislation when it was first prepared?
So the grant application that we're under, there was no eminent domain as part of that at all. The village district regulations don't have any provisions for eminent domain in it.
I thought there was state enabling legislation that allowed the TOD districts to be set up locally. Well, anyway, that's...
Yeah, that might be a separate program than what we're working under.
Okay. And then in the plan, the drawing that you had that had the 10 different priorities, land use recommendations, I didn't see that drawing in the draft plan document. I thought that was an effective drawing when you showed it. Is that to be added, or did I miss that? In the last chapter.
That's it's in the executive summary. So so just to give you a sense that, as I think I mentioned, the draft plan itself will be out in about 2 weeks. So it'll be up on the website and available for comment at that point. But yeah, that mapping is kind of part of the executive summary.
Okay, I guess I didn't print that one then. And then when you send it out to review, do you have to send it to review to DEEP as well, since a good part of this area is in the coastal boundary area?
The plan itself, we probably will, just because if I don't send them, because like as I mentioned, the amendment to the POCD, which I think is, really what they would comment on, it doesn't really say, it's not going to really say much, and they really won't get the inference without the draft plan itself.
All right, so DEEP will have a chance to comment on that, and then on the plan document, you will also overlay the coastal boundary line on this to. Yeah,
actually, Brian just sent. Brian sent the consultant that today, as well as the maps that we prepared as part of the POCD, which included all the coastal inundation maps and the sea level rise maps. So they'll have all that information.
Okay, and then just as the POCD had the requirement for the Harbor Commission to review and make comments prior to adoption, that same process would apply here, and then the TOD plan itself would also include, as part of the institutional framework description, that proposals within this TOD district that affect the harbor are subject to the Harbor Commission's review and comments.
Yeah, and I think John had mentioned that at our last committee meeting. That
I sent them all that. I sent them all that information, Jeff.
All right.
And Emily, is it Emily Innes, Steve?
Yeah.
I sent that. We sent that information to Emily Innes, who was the Harriman land development.
Yeah, I mean, the only kind of editorial comment I would make is that I think there was a big emphasis by just in sentiment throughout the input process that they wanted to see this have a much more in terms of, a lot of things that don't necessarily impact the harbor, but, they wanted things like walkability was a big issue. but there was also a big issue for more green space. And in terms of how that impacts the drainage, I mean, if you pulled up an aerial image of the, the existing TOD boundary or the area proposed for the TOD boundary, it's probably a good portion of its impervious surface with little or no drainage existing. So I think what's being contemplated and considered will help that sufficiently.
All right. All right, and then what would be the schedule, you think, for the Harbor Commission to have this for a formal review? In July sometime, you think?
I think what'll probably happen is, this is just a rough schedule and it could change by a week or a month, but I anticipate we'll have hopefully a public meeting by the end of June where it's just a presentation of kind of a little beefier than what I just did for you with Emily's help, and we'll get public comment there. That'll get all fed to the Planning Commission, who has to hold 2 public hearings, and as part of that, they'll refer it out to Harbor as well as to Common Council for comment as well. So maybe they look at it for adoption in August. That'd be for me, maybe towards the end of August would be like the best case scenario.
And I'm sorry to keep talking, I just have a couple other ones. In the plan where you talk about green roofs as a stormwater management measure or initiative, there's also a paragraph that refers to blue roofs. What's that mean, Steve?
And Emily explained this. It was, I can get you an answer on that, but I don't want to tell you the wrong answer, so let me get you an answer on that.
All right. And then for the Liberty Square area, where you talked about, and I think that's our understanding too, that when the bridge project is finished, the DOT would make the properties available first to the city. Of course, nobody has any money now, but is that something that the city might want to consider in 5 or 6 years, or leave open the possibility that the city would acquire properties there for any purpose, or would you be mainly thinking that, as part of a development project, you'd want the developers to provide public amenities? Would you want to?
Are you talking about the ones that are inland of the water?
Well, the whole place, right? Or whatever properties are acquired or will be acquired by DOT. Our understanding is that they're not going to be offered back to the former owners. They're going to be offered first to the city and then to the highest bidder. So is there any?
I don't think they've had that discussion yet about
right.
that in that detail, considering how long that timeline is out for that. But I don't think they've made any decision about that.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. I dropped the photo, I guess.
All right, yeah, you can stop sharing your screen there, Joe.
All right.
Well, I guess that's
This is Chris McDonald. I had a few questions or comments.
Chris. Sure, Chris.
Sure. Well, there was one. So when I was on the Walk Bridge team, we did a lot of utility investigation on that corridor, especially in regards to the lowering of East Avenue. So the one comment I had about what was brought up there, I know that there is there's actually a creek that passes under Metro North alignment around the Vanderbilt properties around close to Strawberry Hill Ave, and that goes into a fairly large box culvert which runs down and under basically around where the Wells Fargo Bank is, and then into the mill pond, and that actually picks up the drainage from East Avenue going all the way back to at least to the East Avenue Bridge, and probably further back, because when the lowering of East Avenue, we had to chase the elevation of that drainage all the way back there. So there is a lot of that whole area drains into Mill Pond there. And my other question or comment is that will the city or however this is going to be managed, in order to gain this effect that you want of a village district, there's really one of the ugliest things about that corridor is that all the utilities are above ground. So all the utility poles are just groaning with every service available up on the poles. And I noticed that none of the renderings you had showed utility poles and, and multiple services hanging on the poles. So who would do that utility relocation? Would that be done in advance as part of an incentive, or would it be done on a developer by developer basis, which, and just having worked with the utilities, I mean, it's doing that kind of relocation is extremely painful work to do, from a management point of view and a development point of view. That's a comment more than a question, but I'm curious if you'd had any planning to that effect.
Yeah, that's actually, there's a couple different projects going on there. So there's the Walk Bridge project, which affects the East Avenue Bridge. But there's also been on the books for, I'm going to guess, close to 10 years, a widening and realignment of East Avenue north of that up to the interstate. And so Vanessa from DPW's, she's one of our committee members, and she's kind of managing that project. But there is, we are trying to underground utilities from that whole stretch. So that's part of we're trying to incorporate that into the Walk Bridge program too, and hopefully
Sure.
fast track that. But the idea would be we would want the utilities undergrounded through there.
Well, the East Ave lowering and widening project is part of the Walk program now, and it has been for at least 3 years now. The bridge and the road are separate projects. One, the road being managed by the city, and the bridge, both of which are decades old and in the planning, and the other one is managed by the DOT. They've all been introduced into the Walk Bridge program and will be done as part of all that work. I think the undergrounding, as far as the Walk Bridge, at least as far as the Walk Bridge, in the last time I have been directly involved in a couple of years, it was really only going to be undergrounded from Fort Point Street to Winfield, in the immediate zone of the bridge, in order to facilitate that work. For the longer corridor, and certainly in the whole Winfield East Avenue section south of the bridge, is not part of the Walk Bridge program, as far as I know.
Yeah, the city's looking to expand that, though. That's one of the goals.
Okay.
Third
Alright,
tax district owns all that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm the ratepayer representative for third taxing, and they've been negotiating that for a while now, and they're talking from basically the 95 bridge to the train bridge undergrounding. I think it's still in preliminary, because I don't think they have all the figures yet from everybody.
Yeah, that was one of the things that came out very early, was that, if you go by where, what's the restaurant there just south of the train station, but the corridor through there's a lot of poles and there's wires coming off. It just looks terrible to tracks from everything. So the idea would be to underground as much as we could.
Right, and the city said they're going to pick up the tab for that.
That I don't know and will not comment on. So leave it at that.
All right.
Well,
Are there any further questions for Steve? Alan? Remember the app review? Any comment, Alan? Chris, again?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Well, not hearing any additional comment, we'll end the application review committee meeting and turn it over to Mr. Romano. Is he still on board? I don't see him here. Oh, there he is, upper right-hand corner here. John, you want to start the commission meeting?
Thanks, guys.
You're muted, John. You're
Okay.
muted.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve,
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Where is it?
It's 5:44,
5:44.
44,
Right.
44. So we'll call this meeting to order. Is Telesco on the line?
I do not see them,
I
John.
don't see them here.
All right, so let's do a roll call internally. I'll start with myself, John Romano, Chairman of the Harbor Commission.
Dennis Santella, Commission.
Alan Kibbe, Commission.
John Pinto, Commission.
Jeff Mangle,
Chris McDonald, Harbor Commission.
John Crestwell, Commissioner.
Tony Mobilia, Commission.
All right, that's not bad, 8 out of 9.
Well,
Okay,
Matt-
Pete,
Jeff,
Shellfish Commission.
Matt's on. I didn't.
That's here. He's got no audio though.
All right, so 9 out of 9.
And Jeff.
So, and the guests that we have on board are Pete Johnson, Brian Baker from P&Z. Anyone else out there?
With Joe Schneerline.
Greg is on.
Greg is on.
All right, very good. All right, so we'll commence the meeting, call to order, and Tony Mobilia, why don't you lead us in a pledge, please?
Sure. Whoop, hold on. Somebody's got a flag. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
To the flag
of the
United
United States of America
America.
and to the republic for
For
which it stands,
stands one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty,
justice
justice for all.
for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And I'd like everybody to realize, appreciate the fact that we're not being Telescoized.
We got Telesco here.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. How you
Yep.
doing?
I'm
We are
doing
being
good, John.
Telescoized, but we're also being YouTubeized, which is going to go onto the city website. We should be aware of that and commence our meeting. I believe that everybody, as our Zoom phenomenon has taken place, has pretty much been on this call. It's a combined meeting of a plan review and the Harbor Commission. And I just ask John Pinto just for any updates forthcoming. And we'll be beyond that application review point of the meeting.
I'm sorry, John, you asked a question with regard to any.
Just anything that you need to update on any forthcoming applications.
No, we just have some standing discussions regarding, boat vessel placement, but these are just sort of standing issues which we have not gotten any information from DOT yet, nor Eversource. So we're still in limbo right now with any kind of written documentation. Jeff, I'm sorry.
We should have asked Steve about the contractor's yard moratorium and whether that affects the project we heard last month about the Wilson Avenue proposal.
We're still waiting. We're still waiting from Liz Succi. They're supposed to get back to us with that information.
Yeah, but since then, it was our understanding that there's been a moratorium placed on for a year on either was it approvals of contractor yards. Does that apply to this project, or since they submitted
That
the
I don't know.
application?
I know
We
I
should have
saw
asked. Does
Yeah.
Brian, do you know that?
Brian, if
anyway,
any
that was the only.
I don't see Brian on.
If any applications,
He's
Brian,
muted.
that were already in the queue and going through the process, are they not, or are they subject to the moratorium? I would think that they would not be, because you're in the system already. Once in the system, they can't arbitrarily knock you out, I don't think.
Well, in any event, Jeff, we have not received anything, Jeff.
All right, and then we learned after the last meeting also that Deep considered that proposal something that they also should review
Yes.
as a mandatory referral to Deep for a coastal site plan review.
Yeah.
That was a
Well, you-
two-part thing. Liz handled the first part of it, and I don't think she's handling the second part of it, which is the.
No, but John, Deep said they determined, and Brian can maybe bring us up to speed. Deep determined that they need to look at the first part too.
No, I understand that. The first part is a certain, it's the deep issues that may or may not be contentious, or because of its proximity to the water, that they need to weigh in. What we did was is just to do a preliminary review of the process. We were told, if I recollect correctly, at that meeting that Liz was taking it through that part of the process. And then someone else another attorney and engineers were taking over the second part of it.
That was web construction.
Yeah, but it's not, maybe it's not worth going on and on about it now, but after that process, the applicant submitted a coastal site plan to planning and zoning that the attorney was handling.
That's Webb, right?
Well, yeah, that was the applicant, right?
Right.
And then as that process was ongoing, Deep then contacted planning and zoning and said, you've got to refer that to us as well. Not the stormwater discharge part that the attorney was saying would be the second part of their project, but the first part as well, because of the 20-foot high wall. But anyway, we don't know any more about it now. I guess there's nothing for us to do right now.
That's correct.
All right. Sorry to interrupt, John.
Right.
Yeah, but they are coming back at us and into us for review.
Well, our preliminary review went out and it was sent out to Webb, but also sent out to Commodity, so that our comments have been with them.
Okay, other than that, that was the chairman's report. The only thing I have to report is that I may be taking up TikTok, but you'll never see me on YouTube ever again, or hear me on YouTube ever again. It'll be TikTok, somebody else playing music, and me keeping quiet. So that's my report as the chairman.
You had any haircuts recently, John?
Yeah, right. No, I actually have an appointment on Thursday at 1:45 tomorrow. Tomorrow, I guess, 1:45 to get my haircut.
Oh, good.
All right. Shellfish is on. Okay, staff reports. Scully? Greg, are you there? Greg?
He's on, but
Greg is on, just can't hear him.
All right. And so let's see. Jeff, do you have anything to report?
No report, John.
Okay, and Shellfish?
Pete, you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted, so. We looked at that culprit dock on one culprit road, is it? And it's a 90-foot dock, and it goes over wetlands. Well, high tide and it's underwater. Low tide, they have about 6 inches of water. And we're suggesting that if they're going to have a boat, they have to have one with a lift, because there's less than 6 inches of water at low tide. It's way at the end where Rowayton, the White Bridge Deli is, where the bridge is there. It's maybe 200 feet away from there. And Steve's going to write, well, we're going to talk about it at our meeting, because we went out and took a look at it and walked it. They marked it for us. And that was about it.
Pete, is that in our purview? I mean, or is that in Rowayton?
That's in Rowayton.
All right, okay. Because we didn't see it. There was no application that I received.
I think Rowayton received the application.
Well, it's definitely in 5 Mile River. Would that have come to us if it was in the 5 Mile River?
No, Chris, no.
So that's cut lip is 5 Mile River.
The sad part about it down there is, if you look on the Darien side, all the docks and all the boats sit on the mud. It's a shame.
You'll have to bring up with the 5 Mile River people.
Well, Steve's going to do that. So that's about it.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Pete.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Pete, Steve just sent a text saying that he's muted. And he wanted me to let you know, Brian, that he's on the line somehow, but he can't speak. Steve Bartish. I don't see him. He must not be listed as a participant.
He may be calling in.
Yes, I think he said he's on the line, but he's involuntarily muted.
And Greg Scully's muted also. He wants to be unmuted.
If you don't enter your participant code in your email, you get entered as a public member that cannot comment.
Do you know the last 4 digits of that phone number for Steve?
I don't see Steve listed.
Do you need his phone number, Brian?
Just the last 4 digits, if you know it.
His last 4 digits is what, his phone number?
Yeah.
The last 3 digits, and I hope this isn't giving away his number, is 740.
All right, I got him.
Try Scully on 653020.
Greg is in, I think.
Hey, I'm back.
There you go, Steve.
Oh, that's Steve's phone number.
Yeah.
Right. How about
Yeah,
Greg?
Steve is on. Thank you.
You need to get Greg on.
But Greg shows that he's in. I'm not sure if his phone or his computer's not picking up his voice. Because he's not showing up as muted. He's showing up as even talk.
Do you hear that, Greg?
No, he shows
Greg
up.
just dropped off.
He's just offline.
All right, he might be having connection issues. But I'll reach out to him.
Brian, is the screen also being recorded that we see here?
Yeah.
All right, so you may want to rename Steve's number to Steve.
I would if I could. Not letting me.
Steve's going to get crank calls from clammers.
I already had those this week. Thanks, John.
You're welcome. All right, let's move along until we can hear from Greg. The mooring and harbor safety from Dennis.
Yes, okay, the mooring committee renewal applications are underway, as you know, for the season. And the committee continues to address the issues and concerns as we go along. We have 29 approved applications and 44 applications under review. Emails were sent out to each application listing the missing documents such as registration, insurance, tackle inspection, and/or payment. We'll see what happens. We received the missing check that I was looking for as the first payment for the Sprite Island managed fields. So therefore, all first payments for the managed fields have been received. The second payment is due April 30th. But in all honesty, that's not going to happen because the managed fields don't have their fields set up or put together or even know who's going to be in there until at least June or July. So that's something, we have that in our regulations. We might want to consider changing that. It's up to you, but, I'll probably get the check in July or August, as I've always done. So it's not a real.
Greg is still muted, Brian.
You talking to me?
Yeah, Brian, Greg is still muted. He keeps telling me he needs to be heard.
Greg, try talking.
Greg, can you hear us? Can you talk rather?
His
You
mic
want me to
just.
finish my report, Mr. Chairman?
You know, Greg should listen to your report too, Dennis, particularly because he's part of that interaction, right?
Not necessarily, but he could.
Do you want me to call Greg and then maybe he can hear and speak it?
Yeah, because he's not muted.
If he hits *6, he should be able to unmute himself if he's on the phone. That's what I did when I called in, Brian.
Yeah, but yeah, he's not, because if he was muted, his microphone would show up with the red.
Yeah, hey, Greg, try hitting *6. I know, try hitting *6. You're on your phone?
not showing up as muted.
Because you're not showing up as muted.
Yeah.
You hung up. Greg, are you still there or you hang up?
Hey, John, can you put your phone next to your microphone?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to do that. Can you hear, Greg, if you try talking now, can you talk? I'm on your phone or you switched it over?
Is your phone on speaker, John?
I don't understand why you guys can't hear.
I don't know. I put your phone next to the speaker here. So he wants to know if you guys can hear him.
No,
Speak
I just
loud.
heard him a few seconds ago.
we heard him a little while ago when you backed up the phone a little bit.
How about now? You guys hear me?
I can hear you, but
Very
no,
faint.
apparently not.
I got some things I need to say here, so I need to get into the meeting here.
Right there, right about there, John, was the loudest tone.
Can you, go ahead, talk, Greg. Let's see if they can hear you.
How about now, guys? Can you guys
Yes.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So, just before we really get into the meeting, I'd like to address something before we start. During last month's meeting, I made some comments regarding the fire department Marine Division. I will not give my reasons why, but I would like to apologize to all for my comments. I would also like to add that we both do the same job out of the water. We approach it at two different angles, but ultimately we're looking to achieve the same result, which is public safety and protection. So I just wanted to put that out there during the meeting. We continue. For some reason, I don't know why my Zoom, it says I'm unmuted, but you guys can't hear me on it. I've hit the *6, I've hit everything on it, and it's telling me that I'm unmuted. So I'm not sure what's going on. As far as my report, we've got 3 new applicants that have contacted me this week. So we're trying to deal with them, get them in here. I've got another guy that just contacted me today. He's got a 44-foot cabin cruiser.
I gave him your name, Greg.
Dennis gave him your name, Greg.
Oh, okay. So I'm working with Norm Edwards.
They're all sailboats, right?
The other ones are sailboats, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
This one's the cabin. So trying to find a spot that we can fit them. Norm's working on that right now. And as far as the sailboat, the Swanee sailboat, his 45-day period was over last Monday. So we've extended him another 30 days for him to work with him to try and get his paperwork together, his registration, and try and find, hopefully he can find a spot to bring his boat to. So at this point, he's got until July 1st now, another extra 30 days. So it'll be a total of almost 80 days for him to get registration. The boat's still unregistered, uninsured. So hopefully within the next 30 days, by July 1st, we'll have everything that he needs and find a spot for that boat. Other than that, that's all I have to report. The good thing is we keep getting more and more people a little later in the season, but more and more people looking for moorings. The only issue that a few of them have is trying to find a location for dinghy. A couple of them already said that they'll bring a kayak or a small inflatable and launch it right at the loading ramps. They don't have a problem with that. A couple of the other guys mentioned that they're going to check with, one of them's going to check with the city docks on the other side across from the loading ramp, see if he can rent out a spot to keep the dinghy there. And another one, I believe, he said he was going to get in touch with Cove Marina to see if he can rent out a spot just to keep the dinghy so he can row out to his boat. But it's good though, like I said. So it seems that every week we get a couple more people that are looking for moorings, so it generates a little bit more revenue for us. As long as we have the room.
Frank, is there an opportunity for you to speak to Parks and Rec about putting an area near or behind the Donovan building where the launch ramps are? and you start by putting in 1 or 2 transient moorings?
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Definitely. I think we could work out a space there. It would have to be, like you said, in that area, so they have access to the city dock there, to get to the main street downtown and whatnot.
Right.
But I believe we have room for that.
Okay, cool. Let's see if we can work on that. And I want you to pay attention to Dennis's report and see if you have anything. I rudely interrupted him because you were muted.
Sorry.
So.
I don't know what it says. I'm not muted. I don't understand why this is going through.
Yeah, so I'll let Dennis finish his report. Go ahead, Dennis.
Do you want me to repeat anything I said previously?
Other than, I'm assuming that Greg is aware of stuff and there might be something that you have additional input on.
Yeah, he's aware of pretty much everything other than what I've done with sending out emails and stuff like that, which he knows I do periodically anyway. So I don't think that's an issue. He knows how many applications we have approved and how many we have under review. So he knows how to get into that. So my committee report is finished. I'd like to, under harbor safety, I'd like to report from Sergeant Lepak. He sent me an email this afternoon, and it says, May went as follows. The Swanty is on a mooring off Sheffield Island. Vandals broke into it and stole items. They were subsequently arrested and the items recovered. Boating activity is off to a slow start. We are working 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. and have issued several citations for speeding in the harbor. The unit is now staffed 7 days a week. Sergeant Lepak, that's his report. I'm sure we all heard about the theft.
Yeah.
Greg, do you know whose boat that is out there? Name?
Which one?
He called it Swanty, S-W-A-N-T-Y. It's probably the name of the boat.
That's the sailboat off of Sheffield.
That's the usurper, Dennis.
That's the one. Okay. That's the, okay. I get it. I thought it was a private, another boat.
Mr. Chairman, this is Steve. Mr. Chairman, this is Steve. I'd like to make one comment under harbor safety from Shellfish, if I could.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So, as many of you may be aware, Rex and Parks is regulating the launching ramps, and they have set hours that they've published, and they're conducting the permit business down there. In times when they are not actively launching, which has basically been Thursdays through Sundays or Fridays through Sundays, the launch ramps are closed and they are blocked by Jersey barriers. I'd like to comment that this is not just a launching ramp, but this is a means of egress. And I feel that this is akin to putting a chain and a padlock on an emergency exit. If someone needs to get a boat out of the water and they have a leak and there's no crane available at 6 a.m., they're going down.
Ridiculous.
With all of the environmental issues associated with that. I'd like to move that the commission present to Parks and Rec as in ordinary times when there is no staffing, that those ramps are open and unobstructed. Thank you, sir.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Seeing no objections. So Jeff, do you want to draft a letter that we'll send out?
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes,
Steve?
sir.
If you need any help, let me know. This is Dennis.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Do that, John.
Can I bring up one thing though? We have all these moorings out there. You think the city would put a dinghy dock for those moorings?
I agree. There should.
You know what I mean? I don't understand why they don't.
What boils down
And that's
to
something you've got outsiders that are, from out of town and whatnot, that are coming in and mooring their boats. And like I said earlier, their main concern is where can they keep the dinghy? I agree. There should be a small area, maybe on the other side where the city finger docks are, to keep docks for the residents that have the moorings out there.
But
Because
truthfully,
You know,
it should
hold
be
on.
it should be
Hold on.
on both sides, because you have moorings over there, then you got your mud flats, and then you got moorings on the west channel. And if you go to Clinton or any of the other ones, they all have dinghy docks for people for their moorings.
Right, and you know, both sides of the harbor are lined with either private boat clubs or private marinas. So there really is no point for them to store dinghies.
I asked Steve Kleppen for a list of all the city-owned harbor access points. And he's trying to get that for us so that we, all these dead-end streets in East Norwalk, there are a lot of places there, kind of been gentrified by property owners, but there are a lot of places where there's room to park a couple of cars if they had a sticker or something that they go over that, and a place for a dinghy launch point, several of them, where you could haul a dinghy out and put it on a rack on city property. So I'm looking forward to getting that information. I'll share.
You know, the city has a kayak rack out at not Vets Park, at the beach. And that could hold dinghy docks, dinghies, boats.
It doesn't help out at Center, though.
You're gonna row a half hour to get to your boat.
Yeah, but for those, like, hold on.
If they're not residents, they're not going to be able to get to the beach. You know, it's going to cost them $40 to get to that rack if they're not a resident.
Well, I think the city could make some exceptions there, but that's not my purview. The other thing is the docks on the east side of Vets Park do hold dinghies, and you don't have to be a resident to get a dinghy there. And there are guys that are out in the south mooring area, actually go from the city dock with their dinghies out there on the east side. So the city rents dinghy space there.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that, but I'm saying on the other side they should have something. You got a whole line of moorings there.
Also, at the city dock, at the ramps, there are those inside little finger piers that are supposed to be for dinghies.
Okay.
At least they were there.
Are they used, Tony? Anybody use them? Does anybody use those finger piers?
I've never seen anybody use them.
We need to get with Recreation and Parks and get that sorted.
Yeah, and they were erected when we had moorings out there for visitors. Anyway, there is room to put dinghy docks around.
We should just get to Recreation and Parks and get that worked out. The other question about transient moorings is we should, are we going to pick a color of mooring balls so we can easily tell someone what are transient moorings, and how are we going to label them, how are we going to collect the money, all those things? They're going to be like I know the city moorings are lime green. All the mooring balls, yacht clubs are all navy blue. Residents are white with a blue stripe. And there's something we could do as we start this process to get on start with something that we can carry forward as you have more transit moorings.
I think a larger fee is often common for visitors moorings, but it may not be around here.
That's not around here. That's not here. It's open to all, whether you're a resident or not.
Right.
Well, I mean, for transient have been places where there's a V on it, but that may have been somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a different story, the transient.
But
well,
we'd like to have
the harbor regulations allow for transits, although we haven't done it yet, but we could have transients, and I don't think there's any additional cost for that at this point.
Well, you have to have the hardware you have to buy the mooring and tackle.
Yeah, well, that's another situation. Yeah,
I guess that the city, we could eat the.
Yeah, well, but that would be at the Donovan Center where they'd have to register and then go out to wherever that mooring would be. They'd be directed to it because they're the ones that have a credit card machine or the capability to collect money. We don't. So
No.
they have it, so it's gotta be
We can-
worked out.
Use a program that they just go on and say, I want a mooring. You know, there's a program.
Yeah.
There are online systems. The 5 Mile River uses Dockwa.com, DOCKWA.com.
Right, but we're not putting in 100 moorings right now for transients. We're talking about trying a couple just to get the system rolling. And there is a cost. It's gonna cost somewhere between $700 and $1,000, depending on the size of the tackle, to get, to put it in and all, and, you know, make sure it's maintained properly. So there has to be a fee for it to offset that cost. It's gotta be.
You gotta try and figure out a way to monitor this, because we have, you know, people the channel and they see it and they tie up to it. You know, we're not gonna know.
Well, it's got to be labeled that, you know, that there's, in the city, will have to put an ordinance through that there's a $40 fee to use it, but there's a $250 fine if you just do it on your own.
Yeah, they need to be numbered so you know which is which.
Right.
They need to say City of Norwalk Transient Mooring on them with a phone number or.
Right, well, it'll be with that online mooring. I mean, it's.
Dockwa.
Dockwa.
Yeah.
And then
I know.
everybody knows where to tie up to ball 3, you know, and that's it. Somebody else is on. And
And that
Yeah.
registration, you have the size of the boat, you have everything.
Dockwa takes care of the money, the credit card and all that.
I know,
John?
like, I think Oyster Bay, you can rent a mooring out there, you know, transients, and I think it's like $25 a day. It's per day. You don't rent it $25 for the weekend or for the week. It's per day you rent the mooring.
Yeah, that's right. All the clubs, all the yacht clubs in Oyster Bay have guest moorings. You don't really have to be a club member to use them. They're usually $25 to $35 to $40 a night, and you pay by the day.
Right.
And some of those clubs will provide lunch service it goes with the mooring fee too. We can't do that in Norwalk just yet.
No, but
Danford, over Port Jeff Harbor, Danford's has a whole bunch of their moorings are all red with the yellow stripes, I remember. And then you go to the hotel, Danford operation there. There's some city moorings, but they'll charge by the night. It's all $25 to $50 a night range for where you are.
Okay, you wanted to say something else, Greg? You wanted to say something else? All right, good.
John, can I make a comment? One quick
absolutely.
comment?
Yeah.
We had, I think, 6 transient moorings at one time, and they were lined up along the side of the channel south of the visitors dock. And we paid for those with the grant that we got from DEP at the time. And then they disappeared.
Yeah,
So
with
that
dredging.
program,
That was during the dredging process.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that program, I believe that program is still administered by DEP.
Well, that may be in those
perhaps
port,
apply to it.
those
again.
port applications. We could maybe apply for it next year in those port applications.
All right. Yep.
And
All right.
Alan, if I can just go back to one of Alan's questions before, we have in the harbor management plan a map of access points to all the harbor. That's there already.
And it's in our charge to develop those, and
Yeah, well-
obviously have to.
Well, they're clearly labeled.
To get access to the harbor. That's part of our mission. We can develop any racks or whatever that's stated in the plan.
Yeah, but that information is available. It's in the harbor management plan. It's a map that shows where the access points are along the harbor.
I think there's more than they're in the harbor plan. Publicly owned street ends and publicly owned land.
Yeah, such as the
That's what these are.
end of 2nd Street, for example. You know where the 3rd taxing district is. There's a access point. You know, but under under the bridge, the I-95 bridge. So there are a number of access points that are available that are clearly marked off in the plan.
Some revenue for that. Somebody should have a pass, a sticker, yearly pass or sticker, something like that, so that they know that whose car is there and what they're purchasing. So if they have a dinghy rack, then they can go ahead, or that they could chain up their dinghy, or they can just go ahead and launch it from the rack from the top of their vehicle.
That's all good thoughts. Let's see how far we can go and get some stuff going on here. Brian, are you still there? Brian?
I'm here. Yep.
Yeah, Joe Schneiderline's got issues,
I'm on.
and he feels that I see you, Joe, that the Water Quality Committee has not gotten adequate notice and/or access. I know I got something, which I forwarded to Joe. He's been talking to some of the other members, and is that correct, Joe? And they haven't gotten anything about the meeting?
That's correct.
Who was it? Like, who would need the invites?
Well, I do, first of all. I'm the chairman, and that kind of would help. But as far as I know, no one has gotten an invite yet.
I did.
You did?
Yeah, Pete Johnson did.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure
Louise
Steve
did
Hardwick
not.
did.
Okay, Louise did
Yeah,
not.
I did. Steve did.
So I just used the Excel spreadsheet that I had gotten sent. So if there's anybody else that I need to add, send me an email and I'll make sure that they're on whatever invites to go into the future.
Okay, Brian, can you give me send me your email?
Yeah, I got your email. I'll send you an email right now.
Okay. And I'll get that out to you right away when this is over.
Okay.
Dennis, and to make a comment about your report for the harbor safety and the moorings, a few of our members have received your email, so that's great. However, I know that Norm Edwards did inspect all the moorings last year, so
I'm sure he did. And the problem with Norm, he doesn't have a chance to sit down at the computer and load the information. So all I know is it's not on the application, so I say it's not done. But
yeah, absolutely. So offline, you and I can get together. Maybe give me Norm's number, and we can try to figure that out.
yes,
Okay.
no problem.
Thank you,
I've
sir.
talked to him a number of times about this.
Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Thank you. My report's done.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Tony Mobilia, Finance?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You were talking about before about how would you charge these moorings? Well, will the city or the commission with Dennis is looking into how we can get a Stripe account for the moorings that will work seamlessly with the online mooring system. So maybe that has an app that people can go to that they can enter their information and pay on the Stripe account. So
I can check into that, Tony.
Yeah, and Mariana said she'd help us set that up.
It's already in the works. Already.
Okay, good.
Brad is
good.
working on it with Mariana.
Right. Okay, so then either you or I should call Mariana and see how we do it for the commission, so the commission can do it itself for the moorings.
Oh, okay. You mean another Stripe?
Separate, or separate from Brad, So it doesn't go through Brad, but it goes through the mooring committee.
Right. I understand what you're saying. It may not even be Stripe. Maybe it's something else. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, my report. Brian, can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. You just have to go to that green box and you can share.
Okay. Okay, hold on. What am I sharing?
Bottom.
Hold on. Yeah, okay, wait a minute. I think I just got off. Hold on.
No, you're still with us, Tony.
So, yeah, okay, hold on. There we go. Okay. Can anybody see that?
No.
Not yet.
All right, hold on. Let me go back. Technology.
be a green box says share screen with an arrow.
Yeah, I got that. I hit it. Screen, photos.
And then
iCloud
select
Drive.
your item.
Then you got to
Yeah, I
select
know.
what screen
On
you
the
want.
bottom of your screen.
Yeah, no, I see it. It's at the top. Let's try this. No, I can't.
There we go,
Nope.
Tony.
There you go.
We got it.
That's the
Yep.
wrong one, though. Wrong one. Sorry. Nope. Well, anyway, I can't share it. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Okay, I don't think I can share it the way I have it set up. So anyway,
With the numbers, Tony.
I'll hit you with the numbers. Hold on. Just talk amongst yourselves. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. The report as of starting with June 1. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. All right. The beginning fund balance on the 26th of May was $6,006.75. And the revenue since then were $2,757. And online mooring expenditure was online mooring 120. So the fund balance at this moment in time on 6/3/2020 is $8,643.54. So several things came up this month. We got 1,086 from online moorings. Spiral Islands check is there for 1,533. We had a mooring fee that was sent in for $48 and another one for $90. So that came out to 2,007. So the bottom line is we have $8,643. Now I did see on the newspaper, when was it, yesterday, that the BET budget was passed. I don't know what the commission is getting at the moment, except my hope is we'll get the additional monies that we asked for, which will put $20,000 into our coffers. But we still have Jeff's fees to pay. And of course, fees just keep coming in every month. So, but I think we'll be all right. I think once we get past July 1, we'll be fine.
If not, Pete can always kick into our coffers. No problem.
Right. Right. And sell more shellfish beds, right?
Right.
That's about it.
You're dreaming again.
Yeah, right.
All right.
That's about
okay.
it.
Thanks, Tony. Jeff Mangles,
right.
Plans and recommendation.
Sure, thank you, John. So focus has been on the harbor use fee, ways to increase some revenue. We already had one online meeting with a South Norfolk Boat Club. And next week, we're hoping to have a meeting with two of the commercial entities, Rex as well as Cove. So we're going to do that. Alan, as you mentioned, he is trying to get data on private home moorings so that we can go ahead and get an idea of the footage or how many there actually are. That information is a little bit harder to obtain, but we are moving forward with that. So hopefully next week we'll be able to have another meeting again with the commercial entities and see what their opinion is. Matt Gifford is instrumental in that contact. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Jeff, if I ask a question, John Pinto, has there been any feedback yet, or any feedback from, let's say, the other boat club members regarding fees?
So South Norfolk Boat Club, the past Commodore, wanted me to reach out to him. I did. He's an attorney, so he was a little busy.
Vague? Oh,
okay. So I tried to reach him again. In fact, I just sent out a text to him saying, "Let me know, when you're available, and I'll reach out to you." There was some pushback, if you will, for the mooring. For the dredging component of the presentation. So we're going to have to rework that and adjust that accordingly. But
what presentation?
Have some ideas, and they weren't opposed to a fee. South Norfolk Boat Club has about 8,000 linear feet over there, so it would be very difficult to try to take all of those, charge by the foot, and verify all of that. So a per slip fee would be best in that case. Other things that we'd like to do is to go out and verify the managed fields, taking a look and see what's out there, and just taking a head count, if you will. Other than that, that's my report. And I last week or after the last meeting, I did send a report to the commission regarding the meeting that we had at South Norfolk Boat Club.
All right, cool. Alan?
Yeah, I'm once we get more information about the transient moorings and what we're doing there, I'd like to get a piece out to the boating community about transient moorings in Norwalk. And I'd also pad that out with some information about the Sheffield Island and what you can do there as well, and help the Seaport Association out a little bit with some PR. But that's dependent on getting the information and getting those transient moorings in. So as soon as we get them in and figure out how we're going to charge for them, we'll get a piece out on that. That's it.
Okay. Water quality, Joe?
Yeah, I had sent out an article and a letter from Kirsten DeRosa Bannock as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. The Department of Aquaculture is not going to do any testing for COVID-19 in the water with shellfish. And the rationale behind that is very simply that they feel that it is a respiratory issue and not an issue that would be generated through the digestive system. At least at this point, that's where all the evidence is. And the article I sent out was in the Norwalk Hour. Some of you may have read it, where Yale and the Nature magazine have published work on using sewage as a barometer for how many cases of COVID-19 there might be in a community. So in essence, they're sampling the water in sewage treatment plants and getting a rough estimate of the amount of COVID-19 in the sewage, and that can give them an idea ahead of time of how many citizens in that community might have the disease even before it's reported. That's a little bit of scary evidence. John, you reacted to it when I had sent it to you earlier because we don't have too much evidence as to how they're doing the sampling and, you know, whether it's there or not, yeah, they can probably get it pre-treatment, but post-treatment would help all of us a lot better. And that's it.
Okay. Nothing to do with bridges, I assume, Tony?
Yeah, there's only one, and thanks to Joe, he pointed out that they're having, the DOT is having a public meeting on June 16th on the use of Manresa Island.
It's a Zoom meeting.
It's a Zoom meeting, yeah. And it's also a public meeting, so we all can attend as public. So I think that's, I think we have to find out what's going on with Manresa.
Tony, can I try to share my screen for just to see if that works?
Yeah, see if it works. I couldn't do mine, so. I don't know why I did it last time. Oh, there it is.
Can you see that photo?
Yes, we see it, Jeff.
So we don't have any plans yet to comment on. So I guess we'll look forward to participating or listening to that meeting and see what is being proposed. And
right.
Recall that 5 years ago we suggested that this might be something that they would want to look at.
This Zoom meeting is specifically being put together for Chris McDonald. Right, Chris? Because he can see his house. They can see his house from there.
Right. Only in the winter time. In the summer, the leaves block it. But yes, I probably claim proximity right there. Yeah. I will most likely be calling.
Did everyone get a invite to that meeting? I did. I got an email from someone saying, please come to our virtual meeting about Manresa Island. If not, I'll forward the email to everybody.
I have a question regarding getting on that site on the Zoom. Maybe Brian can help. It said you need to register at one point, and then it said if you just a public, you don't need to register. But so how do you get on if you're not going to register? Can't hear you, Brian.
We've been getting rid of the registration part just because it just seems like an added step.
I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Brian, your audio is horrible.
No. Any better?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, maybe not. We've been getting rid of the registration part just because it's one added step that doesn't need to be there. So you should just be able to click on the link and go right into the meeting.
Well, that's the way I thought, but it said register, and it wasn't clear on what else you could do if you're just a public.
I registered. I just had to put my email address in to do that. It took no more than that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
When I went online, didn't they have a section where you could add a comment? I saw your email address, but then there was a section on there if you were planning to join, you give your name and address, and then it was underlined. There was a site.
That's why they wanted you to register so you could say something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you had a comment, so that there'd be forewarned.
Yeah, they were requesting and soliciting comments or thoughts or ideas.
Right.
I don't believe I got that email, so if somebody can forward that to me.
We can forward that to you, Jeff.
Great, thank you.
I'm looking at it now. It says to register, click the button. Registration is not required to participate in the online meeting.
So then how do you get on?
So, I think watch live. I mean,
I guess they got, they might have a button that says go on as guest.
Well, I didn't see that. That's why I'm asking.
Were you able to go, you mean to see now if you could get online for that meeting? Is that what you did?
I went to the website for it and read you the part about registering. It's probably there's probably not a join the meeting, yet because it's 2 weeks out.
Yeah, because it's too soon. Yeah, it's too soon. I mean, that's so away.
The 16th at 6:30.
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth, I weighed in because there's a space there where you could provide comment and criticism.
Mhm.
And I weighed in because that's a breeding area for the diamondback terrapins and also a creature called the mantis shrimp. And I can tell you all kinds of great stories about mantis shrimp. Most people don't even know what they look like, but they are a tremendous food source for striped bass. Nasty creatures, absolutely nasty creatures. And they get up to about 9 to 12 inches in that area. And that's where they breed. So that has to be considered. Now, if they're not building up the road, then I don't see how that's going to have an impact. But I mentioned that right in the area for comment.
Joe, can you send me some info on that shrimp, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you send me some info on that, on those shrimp?
Yes, I can.
I could look it up.
Yeah, they're, all I can tell you is I had a student that didn't listen to me and picked it up the wrong way, and it impaled its hand like Jesus Christ. You know, the mother, when I took the kid to the emergency room, I can't say it publicly like this, but I'll tell you the story when we get together privately. Yep.
What's the name of this shrimp?
It's a mantis shrimp, M-A-N-T-I-S. But
Mantis,
we have a specific species here that impales, and it's Squilla impusa, E-M-P-U-S-A. And Squilla is S-Q-U-I-L-L-A. And it has several ways of catching fish. One is it can grab it, but the other way is it'll impale fish as they swim by their holes. And they have holes in the mud banks that are about 1 to 2 inches in diameter. And they just hang out there in the mud banks until they get a little bit older, and then they go out, and then they come back to the mud banks again. And you know, the irony is, when I took the kid to the hospital, the doctor didn't even know what to do because I had to break the claw off and left it in his hand, and it went right between the carpal bones and came out the other side. But they're great creatures.
Great creatures in what way, Joe?
Well, yeah, the kid
Are they
never.
good for shrimp scampi?
You know, the tails aren't bad. The tails aren't bad, and they're big. It's a big tail. Down south, they eat them. Nobody around here cooks them, and probably it's because they're too hard to find and they're too hard to catch. When we trained the people at the aquarium, I warned everybody, and I told them the story about that kid. I never had a problem with that kid after that. He listened to everything I told him not to do.
I would imagine
But
so.
the mother
When I
fish.
worked at the power plant, we used to catch them in the screens,
Yes,
and the guys in control room would cook them.
yes. Did he cook them?
Yeah,
Steam
they're
them?
not bad.
Yeah. They, I'll leave it at this. When the mother saw his kid in with the doctor and he was ready to remove it, she yelled into the doctor and said, "I hope you don't use any anesthesia on him. He's got to learn what stupidity feels like." Mothers like that aren't around anymore.
Sounds like my mother.
Tough love. Tough
Yeah.
love.
All right.
I can say this about the Manresa. I was at a meeting about 4 years ago when we toured the site, and what they looked at using the basin. They were using the basin for the barge to assemble the structure on, and then some of the area around the tanks as lay down yard and that. It wouldn't be any further afield than the area right next to the basin. And the reason it didn't go forward then is because they were still 3 or 4, well, that was 4 years ago. They're 4 or 5 years away from actually awarding a construction contract. And the DOT wanted the contractor to have an agreement directly with NRG, the owner of the space, and not have it go through the DOT. And at that point, they were too far away from construction to make an agreement with NRG. So I don't know, I don't know what's happened in the last couple of years since I have not been involved directly with the job at all, in terms of agreements with NRG or, and they wanted quite a bit of money just to lease the space in the basin. But if I don't know how everybody feels, if they'd rather have that going on at Manresa than on Water Street, right across from the visitors dock, or, my only concern is local is what kind of traffic can the Woodward Avenue corridor hold, which is, not the best, thoroughfare for large for trucking in large amounts of steel for assembly. But, we'll see what they have to say. Village Creek will be represented at the meeting, as well as just my own personal interest.
And if they're able to relocate the proposed site for putting the bridge together to Manresa Island, that conceivably frees up the South Water Street property for a relocation of the two passenger boats. So there's a number of potential positive results that could come out of this, and then we'll see.
Okay, moving right along. The minutes, anybody have corrections? It sounds like Pinto does, because he made a lot of comments about the syntax and everything regarding the minutes, so.
Syntax.
Them too.
I already made my comments. I already submitted those.
Yeah, John,
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes, or are there any other corrections?
A motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
Okay. Any comments from the public, if there's any public that have come in? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn so they can get on to the next meeting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Romano, it's Sharon Saltos. I heard Mr. McDonald move to approve the minutes as corrected. I think you need a second and a vote.
I think someone did second. All right, I will second that.
Okay,
Jeff Mangels
thanks, Dr.
seconded it.
Spitzer.
Or Dr. Pinto or Jeff Mangels, fine. Yep.
Okay.
And anybody opposed to the corrections? If not, so moved.
Thank you.
Okay, and thanks everybody for participating. We did well. We came out on time. That Brian needs a little bit of time between meetings because he needs to go get something to eat, have a cup of coffee, relax a little bit before he goes. But thank you all, and hopefully.
Thanks everybody.
thanks, Brian.
Maybe we can get together sometime soon. And yes, thank you very much, Brian. Good job. And tomorrow night, let me make sure that Steve and Pete, are you there still?
Pete's still there.
Okay, make sure that Brian knows that I can weigh in and be part of the Shellfish Commission meeting.
Still here.
Hello?
He said
Oh,
okay.
Brian should be hearing you.
And they say it's gonna come back in the fall.
You didn't get a thing on an email?
Yeah, I do, but what they do is they have me in there as a fourth-class citizen.
Well, that's about par.
Well, maybe. Could be.
It's a shellfish meeting tomorrow night, you said?
Yeah.
All right, I'll add you in as a panelist.
Say again?
I'll go in and add you in as a panelist.
Yeah. Yeah, tomorrow we have 6 o'clock, the water quality, and then 7 o'clock the shellfish, right?
All right, I'll add you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Joe.
Hey, everybody, stay safe,
Tomorrow.
be healthy, and go hug somebody, because this crowd, we need to get the crowd factor going. All right.
You
Yeah, take care, everybody.
I'll be the first
All right,
one.
good night, everyone.
Right.